Hey everyone, welcome to Two Car Bros. My name is Ryan and today we'll be continuing our how to build a Ford 302 Windsor, or in our case, a 347 stroker. This is part number 5 where we will be putting on the timing set, the timing cover, the water pump, and the crankshaft damper, basically getting the front of the engine nice and built for us. It's a pretty fun experience because there's a lot going on and it looks more like an engine at this point, which is always exciting. So this is definitely a part of the video you really want to pay attention to, especially when you are installing your damper. There's a lot of forces there that could go wrong. You could pull threads out of the crank snout, you could hurt yourself, you could ruin tools. There's a bunch of different things, if you don't do it correctly, can go awry. So please take your time in watching this video. Before we go any further, I want to go ahead and point out our sponsor, Summit Racing. They have been absolutely amazing to work with. This series would not be happening without them. So go check out all the links I've left down below in the description to all the Summit stuff. They have the best prices on the best stuff. Make sure you buy all your speed parts from summitracing.com. With all that out of the way, let's go ahead and jump in. So here's our timing set from Summit Racing. It's a performance timing set, which means it's a double roller and it also has adjustable base timing on it. This is pretty kick butt stuff and it's sent over by our friends at Summit Racing. Link down below in the description, and there is our wonderful part number. And what we can do is take it out of the box here, examine what we got. Like I said, it's a double roller, so it actually has 2 chains on it, which is super, super cool. Check that out. Oh, it's beautiful. Made in USA and everything. Gotta love that. Check it out. Very cool. And what we can do is put all our components in some oil in my nice stainless steel bucket. Just be ginger with them. We just want that nice and sauced up. As oiled as possible. This is 5W30 conventional, whatever oil, that's not important, as long as it's nice, clean, fresh motor oil. And this one's pretty cool too because it comes with a bearing to ride on. The stock unit doesn't have this, so that's a little more of a performance-oriented thing. Again, put that in our oil. Make sure that gets nice and flooded. And then I also noticed that this set came with some countersunk bolts. So this is how it needs to be affixed to the engine. Because it came with these countersunk bolts, our thrust retention plate for our camshaft has to be countersunk. This is the stock one. I pulled off that old grubby engine and I had this taken to the machine shop and they countersunk that for me so that it's perfectly perpendicular with this surface. You don't want it to be, skewed anyway. That's why I had the professionals do it. Truth be told, if you had a steady hand at home and some really nice countersinks, you could do that. But again, it's nice to have it to be dead nuts on. It also came with different length dowels. I've already installed the shorter dowel in the end of the camshaft. You just tap it in, really easy, but if you needed a longer dowel for whatever reason, you could use this as well. So here is our Crankshaft Sprocket, and this is where you can kind of control where you want your power to come in. So you can advance your timing and get a little bit more on the low end, but it kind of lays down the top, or you can retard your timing and you'll have more on the top end and not so much on the low end. What I like to do is just put it at the 0, or known as straight up, so you have the best of both worlds. So now we are ready to put on our modified camshaft thrust plate, and it goes on, it even tells you back bottom, and on the back there I have a bunch of our Permatex Ultra Slick I applied. We can see that the kick out goes to the bottom right. We can just start the bolt here. I'm just putting them finger tight for right this moment. There we go, that looks pretty good. And now I can grab our torque spec, which is 10. Okay, torque wrench loaded up. There we go, 10 on that bad boy. And 10 on that one. Perfect, we can grab some more Permatex Ultra Slick, apply it to our finger, and we're gonna do this surface. There we go. So I have my UV glove here, and you can see the 0 right there. That's what I'm aiming for on the Woodruff key, and I have the Woodruff key perfectly up and down, which means the piston, number 1, is at top dead center. I've put it in an oven and heated it up. You can see it kind of smoking a little bit. Line that up so 0 is on the Woodruff key, and get it started. And then it's going to become a little hard to push on, and that's when you need I just like using a socket. I have an 1 5/8 socket I just had lying around. It's a nice installation tool. You can put that on and just start tapping it on. yeah, when it's heated up, goes on like butter, and you know you're done when you hear that nice tapping sound. And you'll notice it just kind of glided on. There's a reason for that. We heated it up, and the reason we did that is because just the thrust bearing is holding that. You don't want to cause any kind of damage or any kind of thrust play. Just tap it on, don't beat it on. So I've taken our camshaft gear or sprocket, whatever you want to call it, out of our oil, and we can see that it has this nice surface here, and what goes there is that thrust bearing that I put in our oil earlier, and you can see that inside of there, kind of tough to see, but they're little ball bearings, you know, it's a regular bearing, and you might be wondering which way to put it on. Well, if you try to put it on this way, you can see that this surface can still turn, so it can't be that, and then this one won't. So if you flip it over and push it on there, oh, that's a nice fit. You can see that the inner race does not rotate when I do this, so the bearing is functioning correctly. So we know that this is the way the bearing goes on. So on these Fords, they only use one bolt to hold the camshaft sprocket to the camshaft, and we have this sent over to our friends at Summit Racing. It is an ARP 1541001, and this is going to be an absolutely amazing unit. You could reuse the stock one if you wanted to, but this is not that expensive, and the link is down below in the description, and I always recommend using our favorite fastener company, ARP. And to make sure it doesn't go anywhere, we're going to use some red Loctite. So before we go any further, I want to say that our plugs have already been installed by our machine shop. They're 1/2-inch plugs. You can see all 3 of those there. If they haven't been installed, go ahead and order the kit. I will link down below in the description, and you just tap them in. They're very, very easy. Just use a small socket on the inside and tap, 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 and stop. Just make sure the holes are nice and clean before you do that. And here is our timing sprocket, and you'll notice it has this little dot, this little ping down here, and that signifies it wants to be lined up with our 0. So I'm not going to put it on permanently yet. We're going to put it on like this and line it up so our dowel and the ping and this is 0 on top of the woodruff key is all lined up. So now what we can do is grab our timing chain out of our oil, and we're just going to hang that on there. Perfect, just like that. Get it nice and not lined up. Readjust, put the bottom on. There we go. There it is. Perfect. So once we get that on, again, verify that our pings are matching up right there and right there. So this dot is on our 0. We have our nice ARP bolt, and I have some red Loctite on there, and we're just going to put that in. And the reason you don't tap this on to the camshaft, no matter how difficult it might seem, is because you don't want to tap the plug on the back of the engine where the cam rides out, so you're just going to use this bolt to slink it the rest of its way home. And I'm just doing this by hand for right now. And then once it gets tight, I'm going to go ahead and grab my torque spec. So I have someone holding the back of the engine with some bolts and a large pry bar, and then what I'm going to do is get my torque wrench set to 45 foot-pounds, and we're going to tighten this bad boy down. And there we go, 45 foot-pounds. Perfect. And now I've reinstalled our old bolt. I just like to see it turn over to make sure we've done our job right. Oh yeah, you can just feel the power coming off of this timing set. So to cover up our awesome timing set, Summit Racing sent over this new timing cover, and this is also where our water pump is going to bolt onto later. We do have to install the seal for it for the crankshaft, and it is part number SUM-G6335. Link is down below in the description, and this one's pretty cool because look, it has a mount for a crankshaft trigger, which is super cool, and some people would need that in electronic timing application. We might even need it on our fuel injection setup that we're going to cover later. And then, to seal it all up, we have this nice Felpro Gasket Set, again, sent over by our friends at Summit Racing. Link is down below in the description. Felpro is my favorited choice when it comes to sealing anything, so always go with Felpro. So we have our timing cover here on some wood. That way, when we're tapping in our seal, it doesn't get damaged in any way. It's just aluminum, so be gentle with it. And then I have our seal, and you can always tell which way the seal is going to go in because you see that little spring that's going to face inward. So it's going to be installed like this. This is the front. This would be the front of the engine. And before we install that, we're going to get it some silicone rubber, or RTV if you will. And what that's going to do is not only help seal this surface right here in this area, it's also going to act as a little bit of a lubricant, so tapping it in is a little easier. So this is what our seal should look like. Nice film of silicone rubber on there, and when you store your silicone rubber, squeeze a little bit out and then hang it vertically to dry, and that'll prevent the rest of your silicone rubber getting ruined. And we can put that in the proper way I showed earlier. Just make sure it's nice and square. And what I have here is my bearing and race driver set. Link down below in the description. And you want one that's big enough to cover the entire thing before you start tapping. So we're gonna put the handle in and just start it. Make sure it's as square as you can get it. Once you've done a couple taps and it's started, you can take it off and take a look at it. And if one side is a little bit higher up than the other, like ours over here, this is a little bit further down, you can remove the handle and tap that. See, it's much more square now. And you just want to keep doing that until it is fully installed. There we go. That looks absolutely perfect, and you can verify that by looking at where it mates to the timing cover all the way around to make sure there's no unevenness. But this is absolutely perfect. So before we install our timing cover, we're going to need to install our dowels. Here's one of them. They're just front timing cover dowels. You can get them at Summit Racing. Link down below in the description, and you can just place that in its home, get it started, and just tap it in. And once it's stopped, it stops. Don't try to hammer it any further. You'll feel it'll just kind of go, ugh, and stop. I like using this brass hammer. There we go. There we go. Nice and installed. And those will help locate the timing cover on the front of the engine. All right, I've already cleaned off the mating surface for the gasket. I've put some contact cement on the back of it, and we're gonna put it on in its home, aligning it on its dowels. You can pat that down and then remove it and then put it back on. That is going to ensure a perfect seal for us. So I went down to my local hardware store and picked up some 5/16 18 thread bolts. They are just, you know, around. I couldn't really find a kit that was gonna work for us, so if I find one, I'll try to leave it down below in the description, but these are all 5/16 by 18 thread. This is 1 inch, you're gonna need 2 of these. This is 2 inches, you're gonna need 2 of those, and this is 2 1/4 inches, and you're gonna need 2 of those, all backed up with the appropriate size 5/16 washer. We're gonna put them all on just like this with the washer on there, and I will call out the lengths of bolts as we're putting them on. So I can put on our timing cover, making sure we line it up on our dowels. That's what the dowels are there for. And then you might need to just kind of tap her on and just make sure all that lines up. And then I'm going to grab our longest bolts, the 2 1/4, and put them where the dowels are, because that is the longest well for our bolts. Just get those started. And then I'm going to grab our 2-inch bolts and put them here in the mid. Very cool. We're just going to focus on these 6 bolts right now, and I'm just going to put them in finger tight for right now, and then we can put them the 1-inch bolts on the top. And again, we're just going to have this finger tight for right now, so we can, you know, tighten it all down nice and sequentially. And a cross pattern, that way it tightens it down nice and square, so we don't have any leaks. So now we're at this stage, we're gonna go ahead and tighten them down just wrist tight with a 1/2 inch socket. And you wanna do this in a cross pattern, and gingerly and lightly as you can. I mean, I'm only going very light with this little teeny tiny ratchet. I mean, very, very light. I wouldn't even call it tight. And then you might need like a ratcheting wrench or just a regular wrench to do the top. There we go. And we can keep just wrist tight for right now. We're not going crazy yet. We're not even grabbing a torque spec. We're just slinking her down. There we go, and now we can grab our torque wrench and torque these down to 10 foot-pounds. With our torque wrench loaded to 10 foot-pounds, we can go ahead and tighten them. There we go. And then on the top one, since you can't really get a torque wrench in there, you're gonna have to just kind of feel it out. That feels like 10. That feels like 10. Perfect. Timing cover installed. So next we're gonna move on to installing our amazing electric water pump provided by Summit Racing. It is Summit Racing part number 316013. Link is down below in the description to this awesome unit because we are going electric water pump. This link's pretty cool too because it has 2 settings for your intake. It can either be driver or passenger side. We'll probably go driver for this application, but you could change it if you wanted to. The flexibility with electric water pumps is really cool that way. And then I noticed the bolts it came with look kind of like this, which are fine, you can totally use them, but they're not gonna look uniform to what we have already on the timing cover. So I have these, they're just 3-inch 5/16/18, and they're going to match what is already on our timing cover, and that's just pure aesthetics. And we have 1-inch 5/16/18, again, to replace the different looking ones. You could use this stock mounting hardware, but I'm gonna use these just for aesthetics. And on the long ones, that mount here and here, we're going to be using the small washers it came with. Everywhere else, we're going to be using the bigger washers. And then it did come with a plate, and it did come with a gasket you can totally use that I'm sure works perfectly. But our Felpro kit came with the gaskets identical, so we're going to be using that, and we're going to put our plate on first. So on this side of our gasket, I've already put some contact cement. Line it up to its home, where it's going to be. Pat it down, and we're going to take it off and put it back on. And make sure you line it up and move quickly because the contact cement is setting. We just want to make sure we line up all of our holes. So we're going to take some RTV and we're going to apply it around where the water is going to go. Just the skin of it. This is going to prevent leakage. You don't need to go crazy on it, just the skin's good on both sides. It's going to prevent leakage in the future. Load it up with one of our bolts and washers. We can install that bad boy, at least finger tight. Line it up so you don't disturb your gasket. It's perfect. And you want to leave these loose so you have a little bit of play while you're putting the other bolts in. Now, these don't need to be tight by any metric. This is fine. And then we can grab our water pump. So I'm going to get some spray adhesive, apply them to our seal, apply them on our water pump, take them off, put it back on. Like that, very good. Do the same thing for this side. Make sure it's nice and lined up because once that cement sets, it really doesn't want to be disturbed. Perfect. We're going to grab a little of our friend RTV. We're going to put it around again, the side of the gasket. Something a little interesting about this water pump is you want to preload the bottom bolts before you take it over to the engine because it'll be really difficult to get that in. Maybe not even possible with the engine in the way. These ones have the, yeah. There we go, now we can take this over. So with our 3 1/4 inch bolts preloaded on the bottom, install our water pump. And with our small washer loaded for the top, we can install those bolts as well. We're just going to put them on finger tight for right this moment. Put these on finger tight. There we go, pretty good. Alrighty, and then we can tighten our bolts up in as much a cross pattern as we can get it. So, you know, go bottom right, and then top right, and then bottom left, and top left. Just snug those down. And the torque spec for these bad boys is 15 or so foot-pounds. I'm just going to feel it out because I can't get a socket on this anyway, so that's that. And then we can tighten the top bolts as well. Again, just going kind of in a cross pattern. Just go side to side. Just don't tighten one side all the way down and then do the other. You always want to go side to side. So when you're tightening them, kind of go like here to here, then down to here, up here, and then when you're tightening the top, go here to here to here. It'll be nice and square. So here is our fuel pump block off cover for our timing cover. It came with our timing cover, and we're going to install that bad boy using some spray adhesive on one side, sticking it on, lifting it off, putting it back on, adjusting it so it's lined up perfectly like that. And then we can grab some RTV and apply it on this side of the gasket, end of our finger. There we go. Nice and RTV'd up, and we can install it. We're going to be putting this cover on because we're not running carbureted, we're running fuel injected, which means you need a higher PSI supply of fuel. If you were running mechanical, you need that eccentric on the end of your timing set, and then your fuel pump can ride right here on it, and it works just fine for carbureted. You could even use an electric fuel pump for carbureted. You just have to get an electric fuel pump for a carburetor. It has less PSI. We can grab our cover plate, place that bad boy on, replace our bolts, and you're just fastening these 9/16 into aluminum, so don't go crazy, just wrist snug is fine. Perfect. Now we can install our water intake tube on the appropriate side. For an 81 Bronco, we want it to come in on the driver's side, just like the stock application. And you can switch these up as needed. And what's interesting is this is just a machine piece of aluminum. There's no really way to there's no good way to tighten it on. So what we're gonna do is take a shop towel around the widest part with a pair of channel locks, and I'm just being gentle. I'm not crushing it. I'm just tightening it up perfectly. So now we can talk about Crankshaft Damper. And before I go any further, if I haven't mentioned it previously in the build, we have an internally balanced crankshaft. So you need the associated damper and flex plate or flywheel. Make sure you're buying all either externally balanced or internally balanced. I prefer internally balanced. That's what everyone at the machine shop told me is the better deal in our, hot street application. So that is this part number right here. Crankshaft Damper. It is made by Ford Racing, sent over by our friends at Summit. And it looks amazing. Jeez, it looks like $1 million. This is made out of, oh yeah, high-grade metal. That is awesome. You can even use this in a supercharged application if you wanted to, because it has the associated holes for that pulley. It's one piece, kind of feels like it's billet. I'm not sure if it is or isn't, but it is really nice and high quality. But what we're gonna do is stick this in my toaster oven and get it nice and warm, about 200 degrees or so, so that'll expand the metal and make it easier to put on the crankshaft. So while our damper is heating up in our toaster oven, the instructions actually say put it in boiling water. I kind of disagree with that just because boiling water is kind of dangerous and a toaster oven works just fine. Here is our bolt we're going to be using after we've installed our damper. It's made by RP, our part number, and it does come with assembly loops, so we're going to lube up the entire threads under the head of the bolt and on both sides of the washer. And for the washer, there's a beveled side. It's pointed up, so that beveled side needs to point up to the head of the bolt. Now to install it, we have our installation tools. This one's made by OEM. I will leave a link down below in the description to one of these bad boys, and you just pick the associated bit for that. That will fit in our crank snout. You can also rent these for free at AutoZone or O'Reilly's or something like that. Just make sure that this race is against the nut, so that way it can turn easier when you're applying a bunch of pressure. Alrighty, before we put the damper on, I want to point out that our damper is larger in diameter than stock, so we had to clearance our timing cover just a little bit, and even on some water pumps you might have to clearance it, and luckily they're made of aluminum, so it was pretty easy to cut that off. But do a test fit of it before then and eyeball what you might have to clearance or whatnot, because this is a bigger diameter than stock. That's racing and that's custom applications, so you just have to test fit it. So what we're going to do next is take a paintbrush or any kind of brush and apply some Permatex Ultra Slick to it, and we're going to brush it on the outside of the snout here, never the inside, only the outside. Just make sure it goes all the way to the top, and what that's going to do is protect the rubber seal that's in the front of our timing cover. Perfect. Now with our UV glove, because this damper is probably about 180 degrees, it's pretty toasty, we're going to stick it on the end of our crank snout. So when you're putting on your damper, what I like to do is just find the woodruff key, which ours is right there, rotate it over, look at the notch for the woodruff key on your damper, and we can install it, and then rotate it around until it finds it, and it'll slide on a little bit, and then we can grab our tool, install that bad boy all the way in. You want to insert the tool with as many threads as possible. A lot of force going on. Make sure everything on your tool is nice and lubricated. And then a 9/16 wrench on the end of the tool and 1 1/4 inch on this nut I'm turning. And we're going to be able to see that go all the way down. And it's important not to, hammer on this thing. That's why you want to use a tool. Do it right. Oh yeah, this thing's going on like a cream puff. I dig it. There we go. Nice and installed. And then we need to grab our bolt, remove our tool. So I want to go over when you know to stop, because it's pretty tough. You can see right there, this surface here my pointer's on is right up against the cog for our timing set for the crankshaft. That's how you know it's in its home, and now we can put the bolt in. So I'm going to go over a fundamental of engine building. It's holding the crankshaft using the flex plate bolts. You put them in the rear, and then you have a nice big prying implement to hold it in place. You can even turn the engine over using this method. What we're going to do is I'm going to have a helper hold onto this for me while I bolt on the damper bolt, just because there's a lot of torque forces going on, and as soon as that gets any kind of pressure, it's going to want to rotate the crankshaft instead of tightening down. Now we can grab our damper bolt. It's a 16mm 12-point in our case, and it is all lubricated up like I mentioned earlier. Install this just hand tight for right now. Perfect. We'll grab our torque wrench and set that bad boy to 90 foot-pounds while someone is holding the back of the engine. Okay, torque wrench loaded to 90. I'm going to tighten this bad boy down. There we go, 90 foot-pounds. Now, as per the instructions, once it's cooled down, go ahead and recheck it to make sure this is still at 90 foot-pounds. All right, it's about 40 minutes later. It's about room temp, a little warmer than that, and we can test the torque again, holding the back of the engine. Oh, it's perfect. So that is how to put a timing set, timing cover, water pump, and crankshaft damper on a Ford 302 Windsor, or in our case, a 347 stroker. Thank you so very much for watching. I hope I've earned your subscription here today on YouTube, because we will be continuing to build this engine out, showing every single nut and bolt and torque spec and size. We are going to hold your hand totally so you can build one of these bad boys for yourself at home using our sponsor, Summit Racing. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.